Laying bridge presence. Inside Babbel magazine, the science, stories, and secrets of language learning. What if I told you that one of the most underrated resources in the entire language learning world isn't an app, isn't a course, and isn't a textbook? What if the key to actually understanding how languages work, why they matter, and how real people learn them was sitting quietly on the internet, completely free, and most learners have never even read a single article from it? Today, we are diving deep into Babbel magazine, the editorial hub behind one of the world's most downloaded language learning platforms, and we are going to unpack exactly what makes it such a powerful, often overlooked tool for anyone serious about learning a new language. Babbel launched as an app back in 2007, founded in Berlin, Germany, and it quickly became a global name in the language learning space. By 2023, Babbel had surpassed 10 million active subscriptions, making it one of the most commercially successful language platforms ever created. But behind the app, quietly running in parallel, is Babbel magazine, a continuously updated editorial feed packed with linguistics research, cultural insights, learning methodology breakdowns, traveler language guides, and deep dives into how and why human beings communicate the way they do. The magazine's RSS feed, updated regularly, pulls in articles across dozens of categories and delivers them to curious readers around the world. And today, we are going to explore exactly what kind of content lives inside that feed, and why it matters to you as a language learner. Let's start with one of the biggest categories in Babbel magazine, linguistics and language science. The magazine consistently publishes articles rooted in real linguistic research. For example, you will find pieces exploring the concept of language transfer, the phenomenon where knowledge from your native language either helps or interferes with learning a new one. Spanish speakers learning Italian experience massive positive transfer because both languages share Latin roots, similar verb conjugation structures, and overlapping vocabulary. But that same Spanish speaker learning Mandarin faces near zero positive transfer, because the two languages share almost nothing structurally. Understanding transfer isn't just academic trivia. It fundamentally changes how you build your study plan. Babbel magazine explains these concepts in plain, accessible language without dumbing them down. Another major category is cultural content. Language doesn't exist in a vacuum, it lives inside culture, history, social dynamics, and human relationships. Babbel magazine dedicates an entire series of articles to exploring how culture shapes language and how language shapes culture. They have covered topics like why German has so many compound words like verschlimmbessern, which means making something worse while trying to improve it, and what that tells us about German culture's relationship with precision and thoroughness. They have explored why Japanese has multiple levels of politeness baked directly into its grammar, reflecting centuries of hierarchical social structure. These cultural deep dives aren't just interesting trivia. They are genuinely practical for language learners because when you understand the cultural logic behind a language's structure, vocabulary and grammar suddenly start to make intuitive sense rather than feeling like arbitrary rules you have to memorize. Babbel magazine also dedicates serious attention to travel and practical language use. There are guides for what phrases to learn before visiting specific countries, breakdowns of how regional dialects within a country can differ dramatically from the standardized version taught in classrooms, and honest conversations about language anxiety, that very real, very common fear of speaking a new language in front of native speakers. Studies have shown that language anxiety affects up to 60% of language learners and is one of the primary reasons people plateau and give up. Babbel magazine addresses this head-on with practical psychological strategies rooted in research, helping learners push through discomfort rather than retreating back into passive study. Now let's dig into what is arguably the most valuable category in the entire Babbel magazine feed, language learning methodology. This is where the publication really sets itself apart from casual language blogs. The team regularly collaborates with linguists, educational psychologists, and polyglots to explore evidence-based learning strategies. One concept they return to repeatedly is spaced repetition, the practice of reviewing vocabulary at increasing intervals to exploit the brain's natural memory consolidation process. Research from cognitive science shows that spaced repetition can improve long-term retention by up to 200% compared to massed practice, also known as cramming. Babbel's own app is built around this principle, and the magazine explains the science behind it in ways that help learners actually implement the technique across all their study tools, not just within Babbel itself. The magazine also explores the role of immersion and comprehensible input, a theory championed by linguist Stephen Krashen, which argues that language acquisition happens most efficiently when learners are exposed to content slightly above their current level. Babbel magazine contextualizes this theory in practical terms, suggesting specific ways to find the right level of content whether you're watching television, reading news articles, or listening to podcasts in your target language. They discuss how platforms like Netflix, with its language learning extensions, and YouTube channels like this one can function as immersion tools even if you don't live in a country where your target language is spoken natively. That kind of bridge between academic theory and daily practical application is exactly what makes the magazine genuinely useful rather than just interesting to read. One area where Babbel magazine consistently delivers outstanding content is in its exploration of lesser-known and endangered languages. The world has approximately 7,000 languages, and roughly half of them are expected to disappear within this century. Babbel magazine has run thoughtful, emotionally resonant pieces on languages like Cornish, a Celtic language from the southwest of England that went fully extinct in the 18th century and has since been revived through grassroots community efforts, and Hawaiian, which saw its speaker population drop to fewer than 50 native-speaking children in the 1980s before immersive language nest schools helped rebuild a new generation of speakers. These stories matter because they remind us that language is not just a communication tool. It is a living record of human history, identity, and worldview.